An Arab millionaire decides to disguise himself as a driver to investigate the rumors about the woman he loves. What he saw made him cry and will change his destiny forever. The opulent ballroom of the Al Rashid mansion buzzed with anticipation as the crème de la crème of Middle Eastern society gathered to celebrate the engagement of Zayn Al Rashid and Amira Khoury. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the sea of designer gowns and tailored suits, while waiters glided through the crowd with trays of champagne and delicate hors d'oeuvres. Zayn, the 21-year-old heir to the Al Rashid empire, stood near the grand staircase, his tailored black tuxedo a stark contrast to the ornate gold and marble surroundings. His dark eyes scanned the room, a mix of emotions swirling beneath his composed exterior. This engagement was supposed to be the culmination of years of planning, the perfect union of two prestigious families. Yet as he watched the guests mingle and laugh, Zayn couldn't shake the feeling that he was trapped in a gilded cage of his family's making. "Zayn, Habibi," his mother's melodic voice drew his attention. Layla Al Rashid approached, resplendent in a deep blue kaftan adorned with intricate gold embroidery. She placed a bejeweled hand on his arm, her eyes shining with pride and expectation. "Why aren't you with Amira? This is your night, my son. You should be celebrating." Zayn forced a smile, one he had perfected over years of attending such events. "Of course, Mother. I was just taking a moment to appreciate the festivities." Layla's grip tightened slightly, her voice lowering. "Remember, Zayn, this union is more than just a marriage. It's the future of our family, our legacy. The Khourys are counting on this alliance as much as we are." As if on cue, Amira appeared at Zayn's side, a vision in a shimmering gold gown that complemented her olive skin and long dark hair. She smiled demurely, her hazel eyes meeting Zayn's briefly, before lowering in a show of modesty. "There you are," Amira said softly. "I was beginning to think you had forgotten about me." Zayn took her hand, bringing it to his lips in a gesture that was more performance than passion. "How could I forget the most beautiful woman in the room?" Layla beamed at the couple, her mission accomplished. "I'll leave you two alone, Zayn. Don't forget to mingle with the Khoury family." They're eager to discuss the future. As his mother glided away, Zayn led Amira to a quieter corner of the ballroom. The weight of expectation hung heavy between them, an unspoken burden they both carried. "Are you happy, Zayn?" Amira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question caught him off guard. He looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. In her eyes he saw not the adoration of a lover, but the resignation of a fellow prisoner. "Happiness is complicated," he replied carefully. "We have a duty to our families, to our traditions. Isn't that what matters?" Amira's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Is that what you truly believe?" Before Zayn could respond, they were interrupted by the booming voice of his father, Kamal Al Rashid. The patriarch of the family commanded attention as he raised his glass, calling for a toast. "Friends, family, esteemed guests," Kamal began, his voice resonating through the ballroom. "Tonight, we celebrate not just the union of two young people, but the strengthening of a legacy that has endured for generations. Zayn and Amira represent the future of our families, a future built on the solid foundation of tradition and honor." Applause rippled through the crowd, and Zayn felt the weight of his father's words settle on his shoulders like a physical burden. He raised his glass mechanically, going through the motions expected of him. As the night wore on, Zayn found himself increasingly restless. The opulence of the ballroom felt suffocating, the constant parade of well-wishers and business associates, a reminder of the life that had been meticulously planned out for him since birth. Excusing himself from yet another conversation about future business ventures, Zayn slipped out onto the expansive terrace overlooking the family's manicured gardens. The cool night air was a welcome respite from the stifling atmosphere inside. "Seeking a moment of peace?" a voice asked, startling him. Zayn turned to find his Uncle Faris leaning against the balustrade, a knowing smile on his face. Unlike the rest of the family, Faris had always been something of a black sheep, choosing to travel the world rather than involve himself in the family business. "Uncle Faris," Zayn greeted him, relief evident in his voice. "I didn't know you were back in the country." Faris chuckled, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "I wouldn't miss my favorite nephew's engagement, now would I? Even if it means enduring an evening of pompous speeches and thinly veiled business negotiations." Zayn couldn't help but smile. His uncle's irreverence was a breath of fresh air in the stifling world of family obligations. "How does it feel?" Faris asked, his tone growing serious. "To have your entire life mapped out before you've truly had a chance to live it?" The question hit Zayn like a punch to the gut. He turned away, gazing out at the distant city lights. "It's an honor," he said, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. "To carry on the family legacy, to fulfill my duty." Faris placed a hand on his nephew's shoulder. "Duty is a heavy burden, Zayn. But remember, it's not the only path to honor. Sometimes the most honorable thing we can do is to be true to ourselves." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Amira appeared in the doorway, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. "There you are," she said, her eyes darting between Zayn and Faris. "Your mother is looking for you. It's almost time for the formal announcement." Zayn nodded, straightening his posture and adjusting his tie. As he moved to follow Amira back inside, Faris caught his arm. "Think about what I said, nephew," he murmured. "The world is much larger than this gilded cage. There are other ways to make a difference, to find fulfillment." With those words echoing in his mind, Zayn re-entered the ballroom. As he took his place beside Amira, facing the expectant crowd, a seed of doubt had been planted. The path before him, once so clear and predetermined, now seemed to blur at the edges. Kamal al-Rashid's voice boomed once again, officially announcing the engagement. Applause erupted, champagne flowed, and congratulations poured in from all sides. But for Zayn, the celebratory atmosphere felt distant, as if he were watching it all unfold from behind a pane of glass. As the evening drew to a close, Zayn found himself standing alone once more, watching as the last of the guests departed. Amira approached him, a small, elegantly wrapped package in her hands. "I have something for you," she said softly, holding out the gift. "A token of our arrangement." Zayn took the package, his fingers brushing against hers. For a moment their eyes met, and he saw in Amira's gaze a flicker of understanding, of shared uncertainty. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sure it's lovely." Amira nodded, then leaned in and kissed his cheek, a gesture more sisterly than romantic. "Good night, Zayn. I hope we can find happiness in this path that's been chosen for us." As she walked away, Zayn stood motionless, the weight of the small package in his hands feeling far heavier than it should. He looked down at it, then back up at the now empty ballroom, the echoes of the evening's celebrations still lingering in the air. In that moment, surrounded by the trappings of wealth and tradition, Zayn al-Rashid felt more alone than ever. The seed of doubt planted by his uncle's words had taken root, and as he gazed out at the twinkling city lights beyond the mansion's walls, he couldn't help but wonder, was there more to life than the legacy he was born to uphold? With these thoughts swirling in his mind, Zayn pocketed Amira's gift and made his way to his room, the weight of expectation and tradition hanging heavy on his shoulders. Little did he know that this night would mark the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about duty, love, and the true meaning of honor. The sun had barely risen over the sprawling Al-Rashid estate when Zayn found himself standing in his father's study, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The opulent room, with its dark wood paneling and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, had always felt imposing, but today it seemed almost suffocating. Kamal al-Rashid sat behind his massive desk, his piercing gaze fixed on his son. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken expectations. "You wanted to see me, father?" Zayn finally spoke, his voice steadier than he felt. Kamal nodded, gesturing for Zayn to take a seat. "I've been reviewing the plans for your future role in the company," he began, his tone businesslike. "It's time we discuss your transition into a more active position within Al-Rashid Industries." Zayn's stomach tightened. This was the moment he had been dreading, yet also the opportunity he needed. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to say. "Actually, father, I wanted to discuss something with you as well," he said, meeting his father's gaze. "I've been thinking about my education, about the future of our company in the global market." Kamal's eyebrow raised slightly, a flicker of interest in his eyes. "Go on." "I believe it would be beneficial for me to pursue further studies abroad," Zayn continued, his words gaining momentum. "Specifically, I'd like to study finance in the United States." The exposure to international markets and business practices could bring valuable insights to our operations. The silence that followed was deafening. Kamal's expression remained unreadable as he considered his son's words. Zain held his breath, waiting for the explosion he was sure would come. To his surprise, a small smile tugged at the corners of his father's mouth. "I must admit I'm impressed, Zain. You've clearly given this some thought. It shows initiative, foresight, qualities that will serve you well as the future leader of this company." Relief washed over Zain, but it was short-lived. "However," Kamal continued, his tone sharpening, "you must understand the responsibilities that come with such a decision. Your engagement to Amira, the expectations of both our families, these cannot be neglected." Zain nodded, having anticipated this concern. "Of course, father. I've considered that as well. Perhaps Amira could join me after the first semester. It could be an opportunity for both of us to grow, to bring new perspectives to our family's alliance." Kamal leaned back in his chair, contemplating. "A bold proposal indeed. I'll need to discuss this with the Curies, of course, and your mother." He trailed off, a flicker of concern crossing his face. As if on cue, the door to the study burst open, and Layla al-Rashid swept in, her face a storm of emotions. "Absolutely not," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "I will not have my son gallivanting off to America, exposing himself to what, mother?" Zain challenged, rising to his feet. "To new ideas, to a world beyond these walls." Layla turned to her husband, her eyes pleading. "Kamal, you can't seriously be considering this. He has responsibilities here, traditions to uphold. The Western world is full of temptations, of dangers that could lead him astray from his true purpose." Kamal held up a hand, silencing them both. "Enough. Zain has presented a compelling argument for his proposal. While I share your concerns, Layla, we must also consider the potential benefits to our family and our business." Zain watched as his parents exchanged a long look, years of shared understanding passing between them in that silent moment. Finally, Kamal turned back to his son. "Very well, Zain. You have my permission to pursue your studies in the United States. However," he added, his tone brooking no argument, "you will return for all major family events and holidays. Your engagement to Amira remains in place, and you will maintain regular contact with both families. Is that understood?" Zain nodded eagerly, hardly able to believe his luck. "Yes, father, thank you. I promise I won't let you down." As Zain left the study, his head spinning with plans and possibilities, he nearly collided with Amira in the hallway. Her eyes were wide with concern, and he realized she must have overheard at least part of the conversation. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're leaving?" Zain took her hands in his, surprised by the genuine emotion he felt. "It's an opportunity, Amira, for both of us. A chance to see the world, to bring new ideas back to our families." Amira's expression was unreadable, a mixture of fear and something else, hope perhaps. "And us? What about our engagement?" "Nothing changes," Zain assured her, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. "We'll have time to grow, to discover ourselves. Who knows? Maybe you'll join me there after a while." Amira nodded slowly, then reached into her pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I was going to give you this later, but perhaps now is the right time." She pressed the letter into his hand, her touch lingering for a moment. "Read it when you're ready." Before Zain could respond, she turned and hurried away, leaving him standing in the hallway, the weight of the unopened letter heavy in his hand. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Zain threw himself into arranging his studies, selecting courses, and preparing for his move to the United States. The Al-Rashid mansion buzzed with activity, a mixture of excitement and apprehension permeating the air. On the eve of his departure, Zain found himself once again on the terrace where he had spoken with his uncle Faris during the engagement party. The night was clear, the stars twinkling overhead like scattered diamonds. "So you're really doing it," came a familiar voice. Faris stepped out of the shadows, a proud smile on his face. "I must say I'm impressed, nephew. It takes courage to chart your own course." Zain turned to his uncle, gratitude welling up inside him. "Your words that night, they gave me the push I needed." "Thank you, uncle." Faris clasped Zain's shoulder, his expression growing serious. "Remember, Zain, this journey is about more than just education. It's a chance to discover who you truly are, beyond the expectations placed upon you. Embrace it, learn from it, but never forget where you come from. As the two men stood there, gazing out at the city lights, Zain felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. He was standing on the precipice of a new life, one filled with possibilities he had never dared to imagine. The next morning dawned bright and clear. The Al-Rashid family gathered in the foyer to bid Zain farewell. His mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she fussed over his appearance one last time. "Promise me you'll be careful," Layla implored, straightening his collar. "And call us every day." Zain smiled, embracing her tightly. "I promise, Mother. I'll make you proud." His father's goodbye was more reserved, a firm handshake and a nod of approval. "Remember your responsibilities, son. You carry the Al-Rashid name with you." As Zain turned to leave, he caught sight of Amira standing at the top of the grand staircase. Their eyes met, and in that moment, 1,000 unspoken words passed between them. With a small nod, Amira smiled, a gesture of understanding and perhaps even encouragement. The drive to the airport was a blur of emotions and last-minute reminders. As Zain boarded the plane that would carry him across the ocean to his new life, he felt the weight of Amira's unopened letter in his pocket. He had yet to read it, unsure of what truths it might contain. As the plane took off, soaring over the familiar landscape of his homeland, Zain closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He was leaving behind everything he had ever known. His family, his culture, the weight of tradition. Yet, as the aircraft climbed higher, he felt a sense of lightness, of possibility. In that moment, suspended between two worlds, Zain al-Rashid made a silent promise to himself. He would embrace this journey, this chance to redefine himself. And perhaps in doing so, he would find a way to honor his family's legacy while forging his own path. As the coastline faded from view, replaced by the vast expanse of the ocean, Zain allowed himself a small smile. The future, for the first time in his life, was unwritten, and he couldn't wait to see what it held. The bustling streets of New York City stretched out before Zain al-Rashid like a living, breathing entity. Yellow taxis honked their horns, pedestrians rushed along the sidewalks, and towering skyscrapers reached towards the sky, their glass facades reflecting the afternoon sun. It was a far cry from the opulent but structured world he had left behind. Zain stood on the steps of his new apartment building, a sleek high-rise in the heart of Manhattan, taking in the sights and sounds of his new home. The weight of his luggage seemed to ground him as he faced this unfamiliar landscape. "Mr. Al-Rashid," a voice broke through his reverie. A young woman with a bright smile and a clipboard approached him. "I'm Sarah, your student liaison. Welcome to New York." Zain shook her hand, grateful for the friendly face. "Thank you, Sarah. I must admit it's all a bit overwhelming." Sarah laughed, a warm, genuine sound that immediately put Zain at ease. "Don't worry, that's completely normal. Let's get you settled in, and then I can give you a quick tour of the neighborhood." As they made their way up to Zain's apartment, Sarah chatted about the university, the city, and the myriad opportunities that lay ahead. Zain found himself relaxing, her enthusiasm infectious. The apartment, while modest compared to his family's mansion, was modern and well-appointed. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline. As Zain set down his bags, he felt a strange mix of excitement and homesickness wash over him. "Is everything all right?" Sarah asked, noticing his expression. Zain nodded, forcing a smile. "Yes, it's just very different from home." Sarah's eyes softened with understanding. "It's okay to feel a bit lost at first, but trust me, this city has a way of growing on you. Now, how about that tour?" The next few hours were a whirlwind of new experiences. Sarah showed him around the neighborhood, pointing out the best places for coffee, late-night study sessions, and authentic New York pizza. They visited the university campus, where Zain marveled at the diversity of the student body and the energy that seemed to pulse through the air. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Sarah led Zain to a small park overlooking the East River. They sat on a bench, watching as the city lights began to twinkle to life. "So what do you think?" Sarah asked, gesturing at the sprawling cityscape before them. Zain took a deep breath, taking it all in. "It's incredible, overwhelming, but incredible." Sarah smiled. "That's New York for you. It can be a lot to take in, but it's also full of possibilities. Just remember, you're not alone here. There's a whole community of international students ready to welcome you. As they made their way back to Zain's apartment, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was his chance to carve out his own identity, to explore who he could be beyond the confines of his family's expectations. Later that evening, as Zain unpacked his belongings, his hand brushed against the envelope Amira had given him. He had almost forgotten about it in the whirlwind of his arrival. Sitting on the edge of his bed, he carefully opened the letter, his heart pounding with anticipation. Amira's elegant handwriting flowed across the page. Dear Zain, as you embark on this new chapter of your life, I wanted to share some thoughts with you. Our engagement may have been arranged, but I've always admired your spirit, your desire to see beyond the walls that surround us. I want you to know that I understand your need to explore, to find yourself. While our families may have expectations for us, I believe that we must also be true to ourselves. Your journey is not just about education, it's about discovery. Don't let the weight of tradition hold you back. Embrace this opportunity, Zain. Learn, grow, and allow yourself to dream. Whatever path you choose, know that I support you. Perhaps one day, when we're both ready, we can build a future together that honors our families while staying true to our own hearts. Until then, be well, be brave, and be yourself. Yours, Amira. Zain read the letter twice, then a third time, his emotions a tangle of surprise, gratitude, and a newfound respect for Amira. He had never expected such understanding, such encouragement from his arranged fiancée. As he carefully folded the letter and placed it in his desk drawer, Zain felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Amira's words had given him permission to truly embrace this experience, to explore who he could become. The next morning, Zain woke early, eager to start his first day of classes. As he dressed in a crisp shirt and tailored slacks, he caught his reflection in the mirror. The face that looked back at him was familiar, yet somehow different. There was a spark of excitement in his eyes that hadn't been there before. The university campus was alive with activity as Zain made his way to his first lecture. Students from all corners of the globe chatted animatedly, their diverse languages and accents creating a symphony of sounds. As he entered the lecture hall for his Introduction to Global Finance course, Zain felt a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. He chose a seat near the front, determined to make the most of this opportunity. The professor, a distinguished-looking woman with salt and pepper hair, strode to the podium. "Welcome, everyone," she began, her voice carrying authority and warmth. "I'm Professor Elena Martinez, and this is where your journey into the world of global finance begins." As Professor Martinez launched into her lecture, Zain found himself captivated. The concepts she discussed, market trends, international trade policies, emerging economies, were familiar from his readings, but hearing them discussed with such passion and insight brought them to life in a way he had never experienced before. During a group discussion, Zain found himself paired with a bright-eyed young woman named Lily Chen and a tall, athletic-looking man who introduced himself as Michael Okafor. "So, where are you from?" Lily asked Zain as they began discussing the day's topic. "Saudi Arabia," Zain replied, bracing himself for the usual stereotypes or awkward questions. To his surprise, both Lily and Michael nodded with genuine interest. "That's fascinating," Michael said. "I'd love to hear your perspective on how cultural factors influence financial decisions in the Middle East." What followed was a lively discussion that left Zain feeling energized and intellectually stimulated. For the first time, he felt truly seen as an individual, not just as the heir to the Al-Rashid fortune. As the weeks passed, Zain threw himself into his studies with a passion that surprised even himself. He joined study groups, attended guest lectures, and engaged in heated debates with his classmates. The more he learned, the more he realized how much there was still to discover. One evening, as Zain was leaving the library after a long study session, he bumped into Sarah, his student liaison. "Zain, how are you settling in?" she asked, falling into step beside him. "It's been incredible," Zain replied, unable to keep the enthusiasm from his voice. "I never imagined learning could be this invigorating." Sarah laughed. "I'm glad to hear it. Listen, a group of us are heading to a cafe for some live music tonight. Want to join?" Zain hesitated for a moment, thinking of the pile of assignments waiting for him. Then he remembered Amira's letter, her encouragement to embrace this experience fully. "You know what, I'd love to," he said, surprising himself with his spontaneity. The cafe was a cozy space, filled with the aroma of coffee and the soft strumming of an acoustic guitar. As Zain sat with Sarah and her friends, listening to the music and engaging in conversations that ranged from politics to philosophy, he felt a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. Later that night, as Zain stood on the balcony of his apartment, looking out at the glittering New York skyline, he reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. He was still Zain al-Rashid, heir to a powerful family and engaged to Amira, but he was also becoming someone new, someone who was learning to think for himself, to question, to dream. As he turned to go back inside, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from his mother, asking how he was doing and reminding him of his responsibilities back home. Zain looked at the message, then back at the city spread out before him. With a deep breath, he began to type a response, carefully balancing his newfound independence with the love and respect he still held for his family. As he hit send, Zain realized that his greatest challenge lay ahead, finding a way to bridge the gap between the person he was becoming and the life that awaited him back home. But for now, in this moment, he allowed himself to simply be a young man standing on the threshold of a world of possibilities, ready to embrace whatever came next. The crisp autumn air nipped at Zain's face as he hurried across the campus quad, his arms laden with books. The trees lining the path were ablaze with reds and golds, a stark contrast to the evergreen palms of his homeland. It had been 3 months since he arrived in New York, and already the city felt like a second home. As he entered the bustling student center, a familiar voice called out to him. "Zain, over here!" Lily Chen waved from a nearby table, her laptop open and surrounded by papers. Zain smiled and made his way over, dropping his books on the table with a thud. "Working on the project for Professor Martinez?" he asked, sliding into a chair. Lily nodded, pushing a cup of coffee towards him. "I figured you'd need this. You look like you've been up all night." "Thanks," Zain said gratefully, taking a sip. "I was on a video call with my parents. The time difference makes it challenging." A look of understanding passed over Lily's face. "How are things back home? Still pressuring you about the family business?" Zain sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated. They're proud of my academic achievements, but there's always an undercurrent of expectation. My father keeps sending me reports about Al-Rashid Industries, hinting at the role I'm supposed to fill when I return." "And how do you feel about that?" Lily asked, her tone gentle but probing. Zain paused, considering his words carefully. "I love my family, and I respect our traditions. But being here, learning about sustainable business practices, ethical finance, it's opened my eyes to different possibilities. I want to make a difference, not just perpetuate the status quo." Lily reached out, squeezing his hand supportively. "You know, Zain, it doesn't have to be either or. Maybe there's a way to bring what you're learning here back to your family's business, to create positive change from within." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Michael, who plopped down in the chair next to them, his face alight with excitement. "Guys, you won't believe this. Professor Martinez just announced a summer internship program with the United Nations Development Program. It's focused on sustainable finance initiatives in developing countries." Zain felt a jolt of excitement. "That sounds incredible. When are the applications due?" "End of next week," Michael replied. "But here's the catch. It's a year-long program. Fall and spring semesters here, then summer abroad." The implications of this hit Zain like a wave. A year-long commitment would mean postponing his return home, delaying the plans his family had for him. It was an incredible opportunity, but one that came with significant personal cost. As Lily and Michael eagerly discussed the internship details, Zain's mind raced. He thought of his father's expectations, his mother's concern, Amira's understanding letter. He thought of the lessons he'd learned in New York, the perspectives he'd gained, the person he was becoming. I need some air," Zain said abruptly, standing up. His friends looked at him with concern, but he managed a reassuring smile. "I'm okay. Just need to clear my head. I'll see you both in class later." Zain found himself wandering the city streets, the bustle of New York fading into background noise as he grappled with his dilemma. His feet carried him to the small park overlooking the East River, where Sarah had first welcomed him to the city. As he sat on a bench watching the boats navigate the choppy waters, Zayn's phone buzzed. It was a message from Amira. "Thinking of you. Hope your studies are going well. Your mother mentioned you might be considering extended programs. Whatever you decide, know that I support you. Your growth is important. Take care, Zayn." Her words, so full of understanding and encouragement, brought a lump to Zayn's throat. He realized that while he had been focusing on his family's expectations, he had overlooked the quiet strength and wisdom of his fiancée. With renewed determination, Zayn made his way back to campus. He had a decision to make, but first, he needed more information. Later that afternoon, Zayn found himself in Professor Martinez's office, outlining his dilemma. The professor listened attentively, her eyes kind but shrewd. "Mr. Al-Rashid," she began when he had finished speaking, "in my years of teaching, I've encountered many students facing similar crossroads. Your situation is unique, but the core question remains the same. How do you balance personal growth with family obligations?" Zayn nodded, grateful for her insight. "What would you advise, Professor?" Professor Martinez leaned back in her chair, considering. "The UNDP internship is an exceptional opportunity, one that could give you valuable experience in sustainable finance. However, I sense that your concern goes beyond just this program." She paused, fixing Zayn with a penetrating gaze. "Tell me, Zayn, when you think about your future, what do you see? Not what your family sees for you, but what you envision for yourself." The question caught Zayn off guard. He had spent so long trying to fit into the mold prepared for him that he had rarely allowed himself to truly imagine alternatives. I see myself making a difference," he began slowly, his words gaining confidence as he spoke. "Not just accumulating wealth, but using finance as a tool for positive change. I want to bring sustainable practices to the Middle East to help bridge the gap between tradition and innovation." A smile spread across Professor Martinez's face. "That, Mr. Al-Rashid, is a vision worth pursuing. The internship could be a stepping stone towards that goal. But remember, it's not the only path." She leaned forward, her tone serious. "Whatever you decide, it must be your decision. You have a unique perspective, a foot in two worlds. That's not a burden, Zayn. It's a gift. You have the potential to be a bridge, to bring about meaningful change in ways others can't." As Zayn left the office, his mind was still whirling, but he felt a sense of clarity beginning to form. He made his way to the library, found a quiet corner, and began to write. Hours passed as Zayn poured his thoughts onto paper, outlining his vision for the future, not just for himself but for Al-Rashid Industries and beyond. He researched case studies of companies that had successfully transitioned to more sustainable and ethical practices. He drafted proposals for how the UNDP internship could benefit not just him, but potentially open doors for future partnerships. As the library lights dimmed, signaling closing time, Zayn sat back, exhausted but exhilarated. He had made his decision. The next morning, Zayn woke early, steeling himself for the conversation ahead. He set up his laptop for a video call, taking a deep breath as he dialed his parents' number. His mother's face appeared on the screen, her eyes lighting up at the sight of him. "Zayn, Habibi, how are you? You look tired." "I'm fine, Mother," Zayn assured her with a smile. "Is Father there? I have something important to discuss with both of you." Moments later, Kamal Al-Rashid joined the call, his expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. "What's this about, son?" Zayn took a deep breath and began to speak. He told them about the UNDP internship, about the insights he had gained during his time in New York. He shared his vision for the future, how he saw an opportunity to evolve Al-Rashid Industries into a leader in sustainable finance in the Middle East. "I know this isn't the path you envisioned for me," Zayn said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "But I believe this is how I can best serve our family and our legacy. By learning these new approaches, by gaining this experience, I can help our company adapt and thrive in a changing world." The silence that followed felt eternal. Zayn watched as his parents exchanged a long look, years of shared understanding passing between them. Finally, his father spoke. "You've given this a lot of thought, haven't you?" Zayn nodded. "I have, Father. I know it's asking a lot, but I believe this is the right path, not just for me, but for all of us." To Zayn's surprise, a small smile crossed his father's face. "You sound like me at your age, full of big ideas and determination. It's not the path I expected, but Perhaps it's the path we need. His mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but her voice was strong. We trust you, Zain. If this is what you believe is right, then you have our support. Relief and gratitude washed over Zain. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I promise I won't let you down. As the call ended, Zain felt as though a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He had taken the first step on a new path, one that would challenge him in ways he couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time, he felt truly aligned, with his family, with his values, and with the person he was becoming. With renewed energy, Zain opened his laptop and began working on his internship application. The future was uncertain, but it was also full of possibility, and he was ready to embrace it. The spring semester was drawing to a close, and the New York air was thick with anticipation and the promise of new beginnings. For Zain al-Rashid, that promise felt more tangible than ever. His application for the UNDP internship had been accepted, and he was looking forward to a summer of hands-on experience in sustainable finance. As Zain packed up his books after his final exam, Professor Martinez approached him with a warm smile. Mr. al-Rashid, a moment of your time? Of course, Professor, Zain replied, curious about her serious tone. I wanted to personally congratulate you on securing the internship, she began. Your proposal on integrating sustainable practices into traditional Middle Eastern businesses was particularly impressive. In fact, the UNDP has expressed interest in using it as a case study. Zain felt a surge of pride at her words. Thank you, Professor. That means a lot coming from you. Professor Martinez's expression softened. You've come a long way, Zain. Remember, this summer isn't just about academic growth. It's an opportunity to bridge worlds, to be a catalyst for change. Embrace it fully. As Zain left the classroom, his mind was already racing with ideas and possibilities. He couldn't wait to share the news with his family and Amira. Later that evening, Zain sat in his apartment, his laptop open for a video call with his parents and Amira. He had asked them all to be present for this important update. As their faces appeared on the screen, Zain felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. I have some news, he began, unable to keep the smile from his face. The UNDP has accepted my internship application, and there's more. He went on to explain Professor Martinez's comments about his proposal, watching as pride and something akin to awe spread across his parents' faces. My son, his father said, his voice thick with emotion. You've exceeded all our expectations. We are so proud of you. His mother wiped a tear from her eye. Habibi, you're doing amazing things. We can't wait to see where this journey takes you. Amira's smile was radiant. Congratulations, Zain. Your hard work is paying off. I knew you had it in you to make a real difference. Basking in the warmth of their support, Zain felt invincible. The future stretched out before him, bright with promise. But life, as Zain was about to learn, had a way of throwing unexpected curveballs. The next morning, Zain was jolted awake by the incessant ringing of his phone. Bleary-eyed, he fumbled for the device, his heart sinking as he saw his mother's name on the screen. Mother, what's wrong? He asked, instantly alert. Layla's voice was strained, barely holding back tears. Zain, it's your father. He's in the hospital. He collapsed during a board meeting. The doctors say it's his heart. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Zain felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. How bad is it? He managed to ask. They're running tests, but it doesn't look good. Zain, he's asking for you. He needs you here. Without hesitation, Zain replied, I'm on my way. She'll be on the next flight out. The next few hours passed in a blur. Zain packed a bag, his mind racing with worry and fear. He called the university and the UNDP, explaining the family emergency. Both were understanding, assuring him that his position would be held for him. As Zain rushed through the airport, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was slipping away from him. The carefully laid plans, the bright future he had envisioned, all of it now hung in the balance. The flight back to Saudi Arabia felt interminable. Zain alternated between fitful sleep and anxious pacing in the airplane aisle. By the time the plane touched down, he was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. Amira was waiting for him at the airport, her face a mask of concern. Without a word, she enveloped him in a tight embrace. For a moment, Zain allowed himself to lean into her strength, grateful for her steady presence. "How is he?" Zain asked as they hurried to the waiting car. Amira's expression was grave. "Stable, but critical. The doctors are doing everything they can." The drive to the hospital was tense, the familiar streets of his hometown passing by in a blur. Zain's mind was a whirlwind of emotions: fear for his father's health, worry about the future of the company, guilt over being so far away when this happened. As they approached the hospital, Amira placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Zain, whatever happens, remember that you're not alone. Your family, our families, we're all here for you." Zain nodded, swallowing hard against the lump in his throat. "Thank you, Amira. I don't know what I'd do without you." The hospital corridors seemed endless as Zain rushed towards the ICU. He found his mother outside his father's room, her usually impeccable appearance disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Oh, Zain," Layla cried, pulling him into a tight embrace. "I'm so glad you're here. Your father, he's been asking for you." Taking a deep breath to steady himself, Zain entered the room. The sight of his father, the powerful Kamal al-Rashid lying pale and fragile in the hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting him to various machines, was a shock to Zain's system. Kamal's eyes fluttered open as Zain approached the bed. A weak smile crossed his face. "My son," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You came." Zain took his father's hand, fighting back tears. "Of course I came, father. I'm here now. You're going to be okay." Kamal's grip tightened slightly. "Listen to me, Zain. The company, it needs you now. You must be strong. For all of us." Before Zain could respond, the monitors began beeping frantically. Medical staff rushed in, pushing Zain aside as they worked to stabilize Kamal. In the chaos that followed, Zain found himself in the hospital waiting room, surrounded by family members and business associates. The weight of their expectations, their fears, and their reliance on him was palpable. Uncle Faris approached, his usually jovial face somber. "Zain, we need to talk about the company. With your father indisposed, someone needs to take charge. The board is getting restless." Zain felt as if he were drowning, pulled under by the tide of responsibilities he wasn't sure he was ready for. "Uncle, I don't know if I'm ready for this. My internship, my studies." Faris's expression softened. "I know this isn't what you planned, nephew, but sometimes life doesn't give us a choice. The Al-Rashid name, our legacy, it all rests on your shoulders now." As the reality of his situation sank in, Zain excused himself, needing a moment alone. He found himself in a quiet corner of the hospital garden, the scent of jasmine in the air, a stark contrast to the sterile hospital environment. Pulling out his phone, Zain dialed a familiar number. Professor Martinez answered on the third ring. "Zain, is everything all right?" Her voice was laced with concern. "Professor, I don't know what to do," Zain admitted, his voice cracking. "My father is ill. The company needs me, but the internship, everything we've worked for." There was a pause before Professor Martinez spoke, her tone gentle but firm. "Zain, remember what I told you about being a bridge between worlds? This is your moment. It won't be easy, but I believe you have the strength to rise to this challenge." Her words, while comforting, also underscored the magnitude of the decision before him. As Zain ended the call, he realized he was standing at a crossroads. The path ahead was unclear, fraught with obstacles and uncertainties. Returning to the waiting room, Zain found Amira. She took one look at his face and understood. Without a word, she led him to a quiet corner. "You're going to stay, aren't you?" she asked softly. Zain nodded, the weight of his decision settling on his shoulders. "I have to. My family needs me, the company needs me, but Amira, I'm scared. What if I'm not ready for this? What if I fail?" Amira took his hands in hers, her gaze steady and reassuring. "You won't fail, Zain. You've learned so much, grown so much, and you won't be alone. I'll be right here beside you, every step of the way." In that moment, looking into Amira's eyes, Zain felt a shift. The arranged engagement that had once felt like a burden now seemed like a source of strength. They were partners facing this challenge together. As the sun set over the city, casting long shadows across the hospital garden, Zain made his decision. He would stay, taking on the mantle of responsibility his father had prepared him for. But he would do it his way, bringing the knowledge and vision he had gained in New York to shape the future of Al Rashid Industries. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges he couldn't yet imagine. But as Zain stood there with Amira by his side and the weight of his family's legacy on his shoulders, he felt a sense of purpose crystallize within him. This was his moment to become the bridge between tradition and innovation, between the world he had known and the world he had glimpsed. With a deep breath, Zain squared his shoulders and turned back towards the hospital. It was time to face whatever the future held, head on. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floors of Al Rashid Industries headquarters as Zain made his way to the boardroom. It had been 3 months since his father's health crisis, and each day since had been a crucible of challenges and decisions that tested his resolve. Kamal Al Rashid was recovering slowly, but the doctors had made it clear that he needed to step back from the day-to-day operations of the company. The mantle of leadership had fallen squarely on Zain's shoulders, a weight he was still learning to carry. As Zain entered the boardroom, the hum of conversation died down. The faces that turned to greet him were a mix of familiar family members and long-time business associates, many of whom still saw him as the young heir who had been away at school, not as the leader they now needed him to be. "Good morning, gentlemen," Zain began, his voice steady despite the nervous energy coursing through him. "Thank you for joining me today. We have much to discuss about the future of Al Rashid Industries." He could feel the skepticism radiating from some of the older board members as he began his presentation. Zain had spent weeks preparing for this moment, working late into the night to craft a vision that would honor his family's legacy while steering the company towards a more sustainable future. "For generations, Al Rashid Industries has been a pillar of strength in our community," Zain continued, his confidence growing with each word. "But the world is changing, and we must change with it. Today, I want to present a new direction for our company, one that embraces innovation, sustainability, and social responsibility." As Zain outlined his plans for transitioning to renewable energy investments, implementing ethical supply chain practices, and launching community development initiatives, he could see the expressions in the room shifting. Skepticism gave way to curiosity, and in some cases cautious enthusiasm. However, not everyone was convinced. Zain's uncle, Tariq, a conservative voice on the board, spoke up. "These are ambitious plans, Zain, but they represent a significant departure from the strategies that have made this company successful. How can you be sure this isn't just youthful idealism that will put our entire operation at risk?" Zain had anticipated this question. He pulled up a series of charts and financial projections. "I understand your concerns, Uncle, but look at these numbers. Companies that have embraced sustainable practices are outperforming their competitors. By making these changes, we're not just doing what's right, we're securing our place in the future of global business." The discussion that followed was intense, with pointed questions and heated debates. But as the meeting drew to a close, Zain could sense a shift in the room. He had not won everyone over, but he had planted the seeds of change. As the board members filed out, Zain felt a hand on his shoulder. It was his Uncle Faris, his eyes twinkling with pride. "You did well in there, nephew. Your father would be proud." Zain smiled, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. "Thank you, Uncle. But this is just the beginning. We have a long road ahead." Later that evening, Zain found himself on the balcony of his family's home, looking out over the city. The lights of Riyadh stretched out before him, a tapestry of old and new, tradition and progress. "Tough day," Amira's voice came from behind him. She joined him at the railing, offering a steaming cup of tea. Zain took the cup gratefully, inhaling the familiar scent of cardamom and mint. Challenging but productive, the board is starting to come around to the new vision, slowly, but it's progress. Amira smiled, her eyes reflecting the city lights. "I knew you could do it. You have a way of bringing people along with you, Zain. It's one of the things I've always admired about you." Their eyes met, and Zain felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the tea. Over the past months, as they had worked side by side to navigate the challenges facing the company and the family, his feelings for Amira had deepened. What had started as an arranged engagement was blossoming into something real and profound. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Amira," Zain said softly. "Your support, your insights, you've been my rock through all of this." Amira's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. "We're partners, Zain, in this and in everything." The moment was interrupted by the chiming of Zain's phone. It was a message from Lily, his friend from New York. "Hey Zain, hope all is well. Just saw an article about Al Rashid Industries' new sustainability initiatives. Looks like you're shaking things up. So proud of you. The gang here misses you. Call when you can." Zain smiled, feeling a pang of nostalgia for his time in New York. He showed the message to Amira. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed for the internship," he mused. Amira squeezed his hand. "You're exactly where you need to be, Zain, and you're bringing everything you learned there to make a difference here." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Zain threw himself into implementing his new vision for the company. He met with sustainable energy experts, visited community centers to understand local needs, and worked tirelessly to bring his team on board with the new direction. One particularly challenging project was the proposed construction of a solar farm in a rural area outside Riyadh. The project promised to bring clean energy and jobs to the region, but it faced opposition from some local landowners who were skeptical of the new technology. Determined to win their trust, Zain decided to visit the area personally. As he stood under the scorching sun, explaining the benefits of the project to a group of weathered farmers, he was reminded of Professor Martinez's words about being a bridge between worlds. "I understand your concerns," Zain told the gathered crowd. "Change can be frightening. But this project isn't about replacing our traditional ways. It's about securing a better future for our children and grandchildren. A future where our land is respected, our communities thrive, and we lead the way in clean energy." Slowly but surely, Zain saw the doubt in their eyes begin to fade. By the end of the day, many who had been skeptical were cautiously supportive. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a start. As Zain drove back to the city that evening, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The challenges were immense, but so were the possibilities. Back at the office, Zain found Amira waiting for him, a stack of reports in her hands. "How did it go?" she asked eagerly. Zain grinned, loosening his tie. "Better than expected. I think we're making progress." "What have you got there?" Amira's eyes lit up with excitement. "I've been doing some research. Look at these case studies of companies in similar situations to ours. The data supports everything you've been saying about the long-term benefits of sustainable practices." As they pored over the reports together, bouncing ideas off each other and planning next steps, Zain was struck by how natural it felt. This wasn't just an arranged partnership anymore. It was a true meeting of minds and hearts. Later that night, as Zain prepared for bed, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from his father, who was still recovering at home. "My son, I heard about your visit to the solar farm site today. Your mother tells me you're working harder than ever. I want you to know how proud I am of you. You're leading our family and our company into a new era, with wisdom beyond your years. Rest well. There's much work to be done, but you're on the right path." Zain read the message twice, feeling a lump form in his throat. His father's approval meant everything to him. As he drifted off to sleep, Zain's mind was already racing with plans for the future. The path ahead was challenging, but he was no longer the uncertain young man who had left for New York. He was Zain al-Rashid, a leader bridging the gap between tradition and innovation, ready to guide his family's legacy into a new era. The journey was far from over, but for the first time since taking on this monumental responsibility, Zain felt truly ready for whatever lay ahead. With Amira by his side, the support of his family, and the lessons he had learned both at home and abroad, he was prepared to face the rising tide of change and steer Al Rashid Industries towards a brighter, more sustainable future. The Riyadh skyline glittered in the distance as Zain's car wound its way through the city streets. It had been a year since he had taken the reins of Al Rashid Industries, and the changes he had implemented were beginning to bear fruit. However, with success came new challenges, and today promised to be particularly demanding. Zain's phone buzzed, and he glanced at the screen to see a message from Amira. "Good luck today. Remember, you've got this. I'll see you at the gala tonight." A smile tugged at his lips. Amira's unwavering support had been his anchor through the tumultuous months of transition. Their relationship had deepened, evolving from an arranged engagement into a partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine affection. As the car pulled up to the gleaming Al Rashid Industries headquarters, Zain took a deep breath, steeling himself for the day ahead. Today, he would be presenting the company's annual report to the board and major shareholders, a report that would showcase the impact of their new sustainable initiatives. The boardroom was packed when Zain entered, the air thick with anticipation. He could feel the weight of expectation from every pair of eyes in the room. Some were supportive, others skeptical, but all were waiting to see if the young heir's bold vision had paid off. "Good morning, everyone," Zain began, his voice steady and confident. "Thank you for joining us for this crucial meeting. Today I'm proud to present the results of our first year under our new sustainable business model." As Zain delved into the presentation, the room fell into a hushed silence. Charts and graphs flashed across the screen, showing impressive growth in renewable energy investments, significant reductions in carbon emissions, and, most importantly to many in the room, a healthy increase in overall profits. "As you can see," Zain continued, his passion evident in every word, "our transition to sustainable practices hasn't just been good for the environment and our communities, it's been good for business. We've opened new markets, attracted socially conscious investors, and positioned ourselves as leaders in the green economy." The presentation was met with a mix of reactions. Many board members nodded approvingly, while others whispered amongst themselves, poring over the figures in front of them. It was Zain's uncle Tariq who spoke first, his voice carrying a note of grudging respect. "I must admit, Zain, these results are impressive. You've managed to balance profitability with your ideals, but sustainability isn't just a trend. How can we be sure this success will continue in the long term?" Zain had anticipated this question. "You're right, uncle. Sustainability isn't a trend, it's the future. And we're not just following that future, we're helping to shape it." He pulled up a new slide showcasing projections for the next 5 years. "These are conservative estimates based on current market trends and our ongoing projects. As you can see, our trajectory is steadily upward." The discussion that followed was lively, with questions flying from all corners of the room. Zain fielded each one with confidence, his deep understanding of both traditional business practices and innovative sustainable approaches shining through. As the meeting drew to a close, Zain could feel a shift in the room. The skepticism that had greeted his initial proposals a year ago had largely given way to cautious optimism, and in some cases, genuine enthusiasm. Kamal al-Rashid, who had been quietly observing from the back of the room, stood up. The room fell silent as the elder statesman of Al Rashid Industries made his way to the front. "My son," Kamal began, his voice filled with emotion, "when I first fell ill, I feared for the future of this company. But today, you have proven that my fears were unfounded. You have taken the legacy we built and not just preserved it, but elevated it. I am proud to call you my son and my successor." The room erupted in applause. Zain felt a lump form in his throat as he embraced his father, the weight of the moment not lost on either of them. As the board members filed out, offering congratulations and handshakes, Zain felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Faris, grinning from ear to ear. "Well done, nephew," Faris said, pulling Zain into a bear hug. "You've done what many thought impossible. You've brought Al Rashid Industries into the 21st century without losing sight of who we are." Zain smiled, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. "Thank you, uncle. But this is just the beginning. We have so much more to do." As Zain left the office that afternoon, his mind was already racing with new ideas and plans. The success of the past year had opened doors, but it had also raised expectations. He knew the real work was just beginning. The evening found Zain adjusting his bow tie in front of the mirror, preparing for the annual Al Rashid Foundation Gala. This year's event was particularly significant, as it would be unveiling several new initiatives focused on community development and education. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called out. Amira entered, resplendent in a shimmering emerald gown that complemented her olive skin perfectly. Zain's breath caught in his throat at the sight of her. "You look beautiful," he said softly, taking her hand and bringing it to his lips. Amira smiled, her eyes sparkling. "And you look very handsome. Are you ready for tonight?" Zain nodded, feeling a flutter of nervousness. "As ready as I'll ever be. There's a lot riding on this gala." Amira squeezed his hand reassuringly. You've got this, Zain. What you've accomplished this year, it's incredible. Tonight is about celebrating that and looking towards the future. As they made their way to the gala, Zain couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. What had started as an arranged engagement had blossomed into a true partnership. Amira wasn't just supporting him. She was actively involved in shaping the company's new direction, bringing her own insights and passion to their shared vision. The gala was a glittering affair, with the who's who of Middle Eastern business and society in attendance. As Zain and Amira made their rounds, greeting guests and discussing the foundation's initiatives, they worked in perfect sync, complementing each other's strengths. The highlight of the evening came when Zain took to the stage to announce the Al Rashid Foundation's new flagship program, a series of sustainable business incubators designed to support young entrepreneurs across the region. "We believe that the future of our region lies in the hands of its youth," Zain declared, his voice ringing out across the ballroom. "With these incubators, we're not just providing funding, we're offering mentorship, resources, and a platform for the next generation of leaders to turn their sustainable business ideas into reality." The announcement was met with enthusiastic applause. As Zain stepped down from the stage, he was immediately surrounded by well-wishers and potential partners, eager to get involved. Later in the evening, as the gala was winding down, Zain found a quiet moment alone with Amira on the terrace overlooking the city. "Can you believe how far we've come?" Amira mused, leaning against the railing. "A year ago, all of this seemed like an impossible dream." Zain nodded, wrapping an arm around her waist. "It's been quite a journey, and we're just getting started." Amira turned to face him, her expression serious. "Zain, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about. I've been thinking about our engagement." Zain felt his heart skip a beat, unsure of where this conversation was heading. Amira continued, a smile playing at her lips. "When we first got engaged, it was because our families arranged it. But now I can't imagine my life without you. Not just as a business partner or a friend, but as my husband. I love you, Zain al-Rashid." Zain felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He cupped Amira's face in his hands, looking deep into her eyes. "I love you too, Amira, more than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me? Not because our families arranged it, but because we choose each other." Amira's eyes welled up with happy tears as she nodded. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As they sealed their commitment with a kiss, the Riyadh skyline twinkling behind them, Zain felt a sense of completeness. He had found his path, merging tradition with innovation, and he had found his perfect partner to walk that path with him. The future stretched out before them, full of challenges and opportunities. But with Amira by his side and the wind of change at their backs, Zain knew that they were ready for whatever lay ahead. The next chapter of their lives, and the life of Al Rashid Industries, was just beginning, and it promised to be the most exciting one yet. The gentle hum of the Al Rashid Industries' eco-friendly hybrid jet filled the cabin as Zain peered out the window at the vast expanse of desert below. 2 years had passed since that fateful night at the gala when he and Amira had chosen each other, and life had been a whirlwind of change and progress ever since. Their wedding, 6 months ago, had been a grand affair that seamlessly blended tradition with modernity, much like the company they now led together. The memory brought a smile to Zain's face as he glanced at Amira, who was engrossed in a report beside him. "What do you think of the projected figures for the new solar farm?" Amira asked, looking up and catching his gaze. Zain leaned over to examine the document. "They're promising, but we'll need to address the concerns of the local community more directly. Remember the lessons from our first project?" Amira nodded, making a note. "You're right. I'll set up a series of town halls when we land. We need to ensure everyone feels heard and involved." Their conversation was interrupted by a gentle knock. Faris, who had become Zain's right-hand man in international operations, entered the cabin. "We'll be landing in Dubai in about 30 minutes, he informed them. "Are you ready for the summit?" Zain straightened in his seat. "As ready as we'll ever be." This could be a turning point for sustainable business practices in the entire region. The Green Future Summit was a gathering of the most influential business leaders and policymakers from across the Middle East and North Africa. Al Rashid Industries, under Zain and Amira's leadership, had been invited to present their successful model of integrating sustainable practices into a traditional business framework. As the plane touched down in Dubai, Zain felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The stakes were high, but so were the potential rewards. The summit venue was a marvel of sustainable architecture, its sweeping lines and verdant terraces a testament to the possibility of harmonizing human development with nature. As Zain and Amira made their way through the bustling conference halls, they were greeted with a mix of admiration and curiosity. "Zain, Amira," a familiar voice called out. They turned to see Lily Chen, Zain's old friend from his New York days, waving enthusiastically as she approached. "Lily, what a wonderful surprise," Zain exclaimed, embracing his friend. "What brings you to the summit?" Lily beamed. "I'm here representing a consortium of American investors interested in sustainable projects in the region, and I couldn't pass up the chance to see you two in action. The buzz about Al Rashid Industries has reached all the way to Wall Street." As they caught up, Zain couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come since his days as a student in New York. The idealistic young man who had dreamed of making a difference had grown into a leader at the forefront of a business revolution. The opening ceremony of the summit was a grandiose affair, with speeches from government officials and industry leaders, but the real excitement came on the second day, when Zain and Amira took the stage for their presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Zain began, his voice steady and confident, "we stand at a crossroads. The old ways of doing business, of prioritizing short-term profits over long-term sustainability, are no longer viable. But change doesn't have to mean abandoning our values or our heritage." Amira stepped forward, seamlessly taking over. "At Al Rashid Industries, we've proven that it's possible to honor tradition while embracing innovation. Our model isn't just about installing solar panels or reducing waste. It's about reimagining the very essence of what it means to be a successful business in the 21st century." Their presentation was a tour de force, showcasing not just the environmental benefits of their approach, but the tangible economic and social impacts as well. Graphs showed increased profits, while videos highlighted thriving communities around their projects. As they concluded to thunderous applause, Zain felt a surge of hope. The enthusiasm in the room was palpable. Perhaps they really could spark a region-wide shift towards sustainable business practices. But the euphoria was short-lived. As Zain and Amira made their way off the stage, they were approached by Hassan Zakari, the CEO of Petrogulf, one of the largest oil companies in the region. "Impressive presentation," Hassan said, his tone belying his words. "But let's be realistic. The economy of this region was built on oil, and it will continue to run on oil for the foreseeable future. Your green initiatives are admirable, but they're a luxury that most companies can't afford." Zain felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice level. "With all due respect, Mr. Zakari, we've proven that sustainability isn't a luxury. It's a necessity, and it's profitable. The world is changing, and companies that don't adapt will be left behind." Hassan's eyes narrowed. "Bold words, young man. But remember, not everyone is as enthusiastic about change as you are. Tread carefully." As Hassan walked away, Amira placed a calming hand on Zain's arm. "Don't let him get to you." "We knew there would be resistance." Zain nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Hassan's words were more than just idle criticism. There was a threat lurking beneath the surface. The rest of the summit passed in a blur of meetings, panel discussions, and networking events. Zain and Amira found themselves at the center of attention, with business leaders and politicians alike, eager to learn more about their approach. On the final night of the conference, a gala dinner was held on the rooftop terrace of the venue. As Zain and Amira mingled with the guests, they were approached by Fatima Al-Sayed, the Minister of Energy for a neighboring country. "Mr. and Mrs. Al-Rashid," she greeted them warmly. "Your presentation was truly inspiring. I'd like to discuss the possibility of implementing similar initiatives in my country." As they delved into conversation, Zain felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was why they had come, to spark change, to inspire others to follow their lead. But across the terrace, Hassan Zakari was deep in conversation with a group of stern-faced men. Their furtive glances in Zain's direction sent a chill down his spine. Later that night, as Zain and Amira prepared for bed in their hotel suite, Zain couldn't shake his unease. "Do you think we're moving too fast?" he asked Amira. "Maybe we should be more cautious in our approach." Amira sat beside him on the bed, taking his hand in hers. "Zain, caution is what got us into this climate crisis in the first place. We're doing the right thing. Yes, it's challenging the status quo, and yes, that makes some people uncomfortable. But that's how change happens." Zain squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her conviction. "You're right, of course, it's just, I can't help but feel like we're making some powerful enemies." Amira's eyes sparkled with determination. "Then we'll face them together. We've come too far to back down now." As they drifted off to sleep, Zain's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. They had achieved so much, inspired so many, but he couldn't shake the feeling that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. The next morning, as they prepared to leave Dubai, Zain's phone buzzed with a news alert. His heart sank as he read the headline: "Oil Consortium announces major new drilling projects, challenges unrealistic green initiatives." Amira read the article over his shoulder, her brow furrowed with concern. "They're pushing back hard," she murmured. Zain nodded grimly. "This is just the beginning. The real fight starts now." As their plane took off, carrying them back to Riyadh, Zain gazed out at the vast desert below. The landscape was harsh, unforgiving, but also full of untapped potential, much like the battle they now faced. He felt Amira's hand slip into his, a silent gesture of support and solidarity. Whatever storms lay on the horizon, they would weather them together. The future of Al Rashid Industries, and perhaps the entire region, hung in the balance. But Zain was ready for the challenge. After all, the greatest changes often came from the most tumultuous times. As the Dubai skyline faded into the distance, Zain steeled himself for the battles ahead. The winds of change were blowing, and he was determined to harness their power no matter the obstacles in their path. The Riyadh skyline glittered in the early morning light as Zain stood on the balcony of his office, a cup of Arabic coffee warming his hands. 5 years had passed since the Green Future Summit in Dubai, and those years had been a tempest of challenges, triumphs, and transformations. The door to the balcony slid open, and Amira joined him, her pregnancy now visible beneath her elegant business attire. She smiled as Zain placed a gentle hand on her growing belly. "Are you ready for today?" she asked, her eyes searching his face. Zain took a deep breath, nodding. "As ready as I'll ever be. This could change everything." Today marked the official launch of the Middle East Sustainable Development Coalition, a groundbreaking alliance of forward-thinking companies, NGOs, and government entities from across the region. Al Rashid Industries had been instrumental in its formation, and Zain was slated to give the keynote address at the opening ceremony. The journey to this moment had been fraught with obstacles. In the months following the Dubai summit, Zain and Amira had faced an onslaught of challenges. The Oil Consortium, led by Hassan Zakari, had launched an aggressive campaign against sustainable initiatives, leveraging their considerable political and economic influence. There had been attempts to discredit Al Rashid Industries, rumors spread about financial instability and even veiled threats. But Zain and Amira had stood firm, their unwavering commitment to their vision carrying them through the darkest times. They had countered each move with grace and strategic brilliance. When the Oil Consortium launched a media blitz, touting the economic necessity of fossil fuels, Al Rashid Industries responded with a series of compelling documentaries showcasing the tangible benefits of their sustainable projects in local communities. When political pressure mounted to scale back green initiatives, Zain and Amira had organized a coalition of business leaders, academics, and community organizers to lobby for progressive environmental policies. Their grassroots approach had slowly but surely begun to shift public opinion. Perhaps their greatest triumph had come a year ago, when a severe drought hit the region. Al Rashid Industries' sustainable water management systems and drought-resistant agricultural projects had proven instrumental in mitigating the crisis. The contrast between communities supported by their initiatives and those reliant on traditional infrastructure had been stark, providing irrefutable evidence of the importance of sustainable development. As Zain and Amira made their way to the venue for the coalition launch, the streets were lined with a mix of supporters and protesters. The debate over the future of the region's economy and environment had become a central issue, dividing families and communities. "Look," Amira said softly, pointing out the window of their electric car. A group of young people were holding up signs supporting renewable energy and sustainable businesses. "That's why we do this, For them, for the future. Zain squeezed her hand, feeling a swell of emotion. For our child, he added, his voice thick with meaning. The launch event was a sea of familiar and new faces. Business leaders who had once been skeptical now stood alongside environmental activists. Government officials mingled with community organizers. It was a coalescence of diverse interests united by a common goal. As Zain took the stage, a hush fell over the crowd. He looked out at the sea of faces, feeling the weight of the moment. Distinguished guests, fellow visionaries and friends, he began, his voice steady and clear. We stand here today not just as business leaders, activists or policymakers. We stand here as stewards of our planet, guardians of our children's future. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. 5 years ago, when we first proposed a radical shift towards sustainability, many said it was impossible. They said we were dreamers, that our vision was unrealistic. Today we stand as proof that change is not only possible, it is inevitable. Zain went on to outline the coalition's ambitious plans: large-scale renewable energy projects, sustainable urban development initiatives, and a region-wide program to transition workers from fossil fuel industries to green energy sectors. But this coalition is about more than just projects and policies, Zain continued, his passion evident in every word. It's about reimagining our relationship with the world around us. It's about honoring our rich heritage while embracing a sustainable future. It's about leaving a legacy our children can be proud of. As he concluded his speech, the room erupted in applause. Zain felt a surge of hope. The tide was turning. The path ahead would not be easy, but they had momentum on their side. As Zain stepped down from the podium, he was surprised to see a familiar face approaching. Hassan Zakari. The oil tycoon's expression was unreadable as he extended his hand. "Congratulations, Mr. Al-Rashid," Hassan said, his tone neutral. "You've achieved something remarkable here." Zain shook his hand, cautious but hopeful. "Thank you, Mr. Zakari. I hope this means we can count on Petrogulf's support for the coalition's initiatives." Hassan's lips quirked in a small smile. "Let's just say, I'm open to discussions. The world is changing, and even old dogs like me need to learn new tricks." As Hassan walked away, Amira appeared at Zain's side, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Did that really just happen?" Zain chuckled, wrapping an arm around her waist. "I think it did. Maybe there's hope for us all yet." The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, interviews, and celebrations. By the time Zain and Amira returned home, they were exhausted but exhilarated. As they stood on the terrace of their home, looking out at the city they had worked so hard to transform, Zain felt a profound sense of accomplishment and anticipation. "Do you remember that night in New York?" Amira asked softly. "When you were just a student, dreaming of making a difference?" Zain nodded, smiling at the memory. "It feels like a lifetime ago." "Look at how far you've come," Amira said, her eyes shining with pride. "Look at how far we've come." Zain turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "We did this together, Amira. Every step of the way. I couldn't have done any of it without you." As if on cue, Amira gasped, placing a hand on her belly. "The baby's kicking," she said with a laugh. "I think someone's excited about the future too." Zain placed his hand next to hers, feeling the flutter of movement beneath. In that moment, the true magnitude of their work hit him. They weren't just changing the present, they were shaping the world their child would inherit. "What do you think the future holds?" Amira asked, leaning into his embrace. Zain gazed out at the horizon, where the first stars were beginning to twinkle in the darkening sky. "I don't know for sure," he said thoughtfully. "But I do know this. Whatever challenges come our way, we'll face them together, and we'll keep working every day to build a world that's cleaner, fairer, and full of opportunity for everyone." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms with the promise of new life between them, Zain felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been long and often difficult, but it had led them here, to a moment of hope, of possibility, of new beginnings. The sun had set on the old ways of doing business, on the era of unchecked exploitation and short-term thinking. Now, a new dawn was breaking, a dawn of sustainability, of innovation, of shared prosperity. And Zain and Amira were ready to lead the way into this bright new future, hand in hand, one step at a time. As the lights of Riyadh twinkled below them, a testament to the change they had sparked, Zain and Amira looked to the horizon, ready for whatever adventures tomorrow might bring. The story of Al Rashid Industries and of their love was far from over. In fact, in many ways, it was just beginning.